provide advanced cargo information before the aircraft arrives in its destination airport. Of those 70 countries that we're working with at the moment, you'll probably be interested to hear that about 50 of them are actually using Iata XML standards or in discussions with us to actually implement them. It's a very time-consuming program for us, mainly because a lot of customs administrations use the opportunity of advanced cargo information to start requiring additional data over and above the data set that's actually been established by the World Customs Organization. And this in turn can make supply chains quite unstable when it comes to knowing what the data requirements should be. Moving to a new requirement that came off the back of the Yemen ink cartridge incident, when explosives were concealed within ink cartridges in October 2010, was required by a number of states to actually have data on the cargo shipments excuse me, prior to the loading onto an aircraft. And it's generally called the preloading advanced cargo information. The US was the first one out of the starting block with this, and since last year it's been requiring that all cargo being flown into the United States must provide a data set of 7 data elements prior to the aircraft being loaded. And the idea behind it is it gives the opportunity to mitigate any risks that occur before the aircraft departs. It's particularly aimed at countries that have got a high inbound threat. So to date, the US, as I said, was first out of the starting block, but Canada, the European Union, and recently the UK have introduced pilot programs. The UK has done it as a consequence of what may happen with Brexit. Obviously, we need to monitor that and ensure that we don't end up with countries who have got a low inbound threat actually having this requirement, because it's an extremely costly requirement for airlines to actually meet. Moving to cargo security, these are the main topics that we've worked on in the last year. You won't be surprised to hear that when it comes to security information in a supply chain, often the same requirement, the same information is required multiple times. And again, that is an efficiency that the airline could actually achieve if we can find mechanisms to reduce the duplication of information being provided again and again and again. So a lot of work has been done with the rollout of the Consignment Security Declaration and the Electronic Consignment Security Declaration to use that as a mechanism to reduce some of that bureaucracy. Cargo data is always an ongoing challenge for us, not in providing it, but again ensuring that regulators stick to those global standards that have been established. Because as you can imagine, if you've got 3 or 4 countries in a supply chain, one of them requires 30 data elements and one requires 10, the airline always has to carry the 30 data elements. So by sticking to the global standards, you can have more predictability and more timely shipments. Screening technology was a big ticket item this year and will be next year. Particularly, we're looking at moving screening technology away from its current area. It was basically screening technology for cargo was based on baggage. And obviously there's a need for that to change in the current environment. So we're working with some technology providers and with the Transport Security Administration in the States to develop better cargo algorithms for that. An area that we will touch on in the next presentation, I think, is using screening technology to look beyond the traditional bomb-in-the-box type threat. In particular, smuggled lithium batteries is capturing our attention. The technology providers have got the technology to detect it. The issue that we are having, and I certainly am having with my team, is trying to get the regulators to take an interest in this concern. ICAO and the civil aviation authorities are not targeting for smuggled lithium batteries because it doesn't fall into their remit, and the customs administrations have different priorities. So we've actually got a program underway to try and get them more interest so that we can work together to try and mitigate that risk. Explosive detection dogs, I'll move to that one in the interest of time. This has become a big ticket item this year because of the removal of the account consignor program. To give you an example, in the United States, there's tens of thousands of account consigners, and that program will be phased out by June 2021. And it will mean those consignments that today do not require additional screening before they go on an all-cargo aircraft will have to comply with the normal cargo screening requirements, and the use of dogs is seen as a way of actually meeting those new requirements. So there are massive explosive dog detection programs around the world at the moment, and that is being used as the main way of actually trying to meet that risk. There's a lack of guidelines around this at the moment within the ICAO manuals, and we've been working closely with the regulators to develop guidelines on how to actually implement explosive detection dog programs and put them in place. One that's always of interest to you, I know, is the work that we've been doing within the ROOTS program with governments, other international organisations like the World Customs Organization, to actually try and mitigate the risk of the illicit wildlife smuggling. Our part of the pie, if you like, was to undertake a series of airport assessments in destination and origin airports to look at the way that all the agencies, both private and public, are working together to try and combat the illicit wildlife trade. We've just finished the last one of the program in Addis Ababa a few weeks ago. We're working together with all of the partners within the ROOTS program to develop some guidelines that will help those airports that have been assessed and any other airport that wishes to take action to provide some guidelines to actually assist them combat this ongoing and ever-growing threat. Moving now to another active area around capacity building. As many of you know, we've been for a long time involved in providing capacity building support to regulators, airlines, and other private sector entities within the security domain. This year we've actually expanded that out off the back of the World Trade Organization's Trade Facilitation Agreement. There's a lot of support and actual finance available through the World Bank and other donors to look at the air cargo supply chain and look at airport efficiencies in terms of trade facilitation. I'll touch on that in a moment, but we're working very closely with donors to actually pinpoint airports in particularly least developed countries where we can actually work together with donors to implement programs that will increase their efficiencies, reduce the time taken to complete formalities at airports. A lot of that is around the trade facilitation agreement that I've just mentioned now. That trade facilitation agreement has been signed by 140 countries. Implementation for the least developed and developing countries can take up to 10 to 15 years. They have a period of time to implement. We're working with the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation and obviously the WTO on ways to look how we can get efficiencies off the back of this program. I mention it because when it comes to trade facilitation, what we've seen is most of the focus up to date has been looking at the maritime ports and making them more efficiencies. And the airports have been neglected, and that has now been recognised by not only the donors, but also international organisations. So we've got a lot of activity around that coming up in the next year, and I'll report back at the end of 2020. I guess I'm running out of time, Catherine. No, still okay? So just moving to the last slide I've got here. This is an indicative slide that our colleagues from Cargo IQ assisted us with. These numbers indicate the average per day on how long it takes to clear a shipment through an airport. It comes with a big caveat. The actual statistics are based on the length of time it takes to effect customs clearance, but it also takes into account consumer behaviour as well. It's a combination of both of those. Now, in some locations, it may be all just customs formalities taking a long time, and in other locations, it may be more consumer behaviour. But it indicates how long it takes to actually clear cargo through an airport. In looking at this and putting this slide together, we measured something in the region of 14 million shipments around the world. Thank you. That's it for me, Catherine.
Thank you, Gordon. Any questions for Gordon? Hands.
Could you enlighten us a bit about this massive explosive detection dog programs worldwide? I haven't heard anything about that. How many countries and who's doing that? Are these private companies? And you mentioned the smuggling of lithium batteries. It's getting your attention. If it does, then we're not talking about a one-off or something like that, or one-on. Who are these people? And in combination with that, yesterday it was mentioned there are rogue air cargo operators, and one of your colleagues said, we know who they are, where they are. Can you give us some details? Thank you.
Starting with the dog detection programs, the big increase has been in the US because of the removal of the account consignor program. And the legislation was changed in the US to actually allow private sector companies to be established to undertake that activity. So a number of big companies have actually been established in the last year, predominantly to help manage the account consignor program. We're also seeing it around the world where countries are looking beyond the more traditional screening requirements using X-ray or trace detection and looking at dog programs. I know that in Hong Kong at the moment, they're trying to increase the number of consignments that they screen, and they're actually trialling a dog program there, and it's likely to be put in place. The second question was on lithium batteries. It's certainly not a one-off incident. It's something that we're seeing on a regular basis now. I know that Dave will be in a better position to talk more about that after me. But we do remain concerned about it, particularly when they're misdescribed, because it seems to fall between two pillars. All the ICAO instruments are there to actually screen for explosives. And so the only other agency with capability at the airport to screen for smuggled lithium batteries is Customs. And Customs puts resources into imports and not exports. And that's really where you want to detect them, before smuggled lithium batteries get on board an aircraft. So I hope that answers your questions.
Any other questions? Damien?
Yeah, Damien Bray, Carby News. That final slide with the 1.41 day average it takes for cargo to be cleared on the border. Can you tell me, is that for 20, what is that over the last year? And also, has that improved or got worse over recent years? And if so, what's driving?
It's the statistics for 2018. It's based on that. And I said it was a combination of customs and consumer. It's actually customs and sorry? Yeah, it's the owner of the goods basically. Yeah. So we've only really started tracking it over the last year or so. We would expect those numbers to drop as the trade facilitation agreement kicks in. It's customer behaviour, I've remembered. Customer behaviour and customer behaviour.
Yeah, next question, Will, please.
Oh yeah, hi, Gordon. I've seen mentioned ICAO cargo security changes coming into force in next year from January. But I've lost track of what those are. What are we facing in, what new rules from ICAO are coming in next year?
Well, particularly there's a lot happening in, but I assume you're referring within the cargo domain, are you? Well, obviously the first one is the phase out of the account consignor program. That is taking up a lot of time within the AFSEP panel at the moment because certain countries are struggling to actually meet the deadline of June 2021 for that and replace it with another program. Screening technology is also one that is being discussed a lot, and there's a new technology group that's been established within ICAO that is working on developing new methods of screening technology as the risk continues to evolve. And the area that I could talk to quite clearly is the traditional where guns may be smuggled. Now we're moving into plastic explosives, so you need to have the technology in order to detect that. More work is being done also on capacity building, because as you go around the globe, if you're flying out of here, obviously the security screening, I would say, will be top end. They're using modern machinery and so on. In least developed and poorer countries, they're single view machines that are being used, and they really need to, particularly in the current environment, do something to provide cheaper alternatives to expensive equipment, which is again where explosive detection dogs come in, because they're obviously cheaper than very expensive equipment that needs to be maintained on a regular basis.
But there's not a big global implementation coming in January 2020 from ICAO?
No, on the cargo side, it's those areas and the pre-loading advanced cargo information programs that are the ones that are the main ticket items.
Which are national based?
They're national based but built on an international standard.
Any last final questions? No? Thank you, Bern. We've been hearing a lot about the next topic over the last few days. We're now moving on to our lithium battery expert, Dave Brennan, Assistant Director, Cargo Safety and Standards. He's just going to go into a bit more detail about the topic of lithium batteries.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So, I'll start off by saying we're not changing the regulations. We've been through a phase, probably over the last 6 or 8 years, where it seems we keep changing the regulations. Much of that has been